At 25, Celine Adeyemi had already mastered rooms most people twice her age were still trying to enter. Boardrooms fell silent when she spoke. Investors leaned forward when she presented. Influencers waited weeks for her approval before tagging her brand. She was not just Chief Adeyemi's daughter. She was the founder and CEO of Allura Luxe, one of West Africa's fastest-growing human hair wig companies, built on premium sourcing, ethical manufacturing, and fierce branding. Her Lekki waterfront suite overlooked the Atlantic. Her days were packed with strategy calls, supplier negotiations, and export logistics. Her nights were usually spent reviewing numbers with a glass of sparkling water on her balcony. She had discipline. She had drive. She had standards. What she did not have, yet, was experience with emotional manipulation. And that is how Roy Anderson entered her life. Roy was her father's senior legal advisor at the family conglomerate's law firm. He was composed, intelligent, and sharp in ways that felt reassuring. The first time they spoke alone was during a compliance review meeting. Celine had presented a bold expansion plan into European markets. Most of the older executives hesitated. Roy didn't. He asked detailed questions, not dismissive ones, thoughtful ones. "You're thinking long-term," he said afterward, walking beside her in the hallway. "That's rare." She smiled politely. "I prefer sustainability over noise." He nodded approvingly. That was the first hook. Respect. When a powerful man validates your intellect, it feels different from flattery. Feels earned. And Celine had always valued being respected more than being admired. Roy didn't rush. He didn't overwhelm her with affection. He studied her. He sent articles about global beauty markets. He asked her opinion about legal frameworks affecting e-commerce exports. He treated her like a peer. Then gradually, he shifted. The professional dinners became personal dinners. The late-night work calls became personal check-ins. "You work too hard," he told her one evening over dessert. "Who takes care of you?" It was a simple sentence, but it lingered. Celine had built herself to be strong, independent, capable. But strength does not eliminate the desire to be cherished. And Roy knew that. The first shift in tone. The first red flag came disguised as mentorship. They were seated at an upscale restaurant in Victoria Island when she mentioned adjusting her European pricing strategy. He tilted his head slightly. "That's risky." "I've run the numbers," she replied calmly. He leaned back. "You're young, Celine. Sometimes confidence outpaces experience." The words were soft, but sharp. It was the first time she felt smaller. She laughed lightly to diffuse the tension. "I'll revisit the projections." He smiled again. And the moment passed. Or so she thought. Over the next few weeks, subtle changes appeared. If she disagreed with him, he'd go quiet. If she was delayed because of work, he'd question her priorities. If she asserted herself strongly, he'd describe her as intense. Each time he framed it as growth advice. "I'm just helping you mature. You don't want people to see you as emotional. You need refinement." The language was polished, constructive, but consistent. And consistency builds belief. Celine began second-guessing herself. Was she too assertive? Too ambitious? Too firm? She had built a multimillion naira business from scratch. Yet one man's tone began to reshape how she viewed herself. That is how emotional erosion works. Not loudly, quietly. Celine grew up watching her mother navigate marriage with patience. Her mother often said, "A woman's strength is in her endurance. Marriage requires sacrifice. Men are wired differently. You must bend sometimes." Celine respected her mother deeply. So when Roy's behavior unsettled her, she filtered it through that belief. Maybe this is normal. Maybe relationships require swallowing pride. Maybe love demands adjustment. She told herself, "He's older. He knows better. He wants me to grow." But growth that requires you to diminish yourself is not growth. It is conditioning. The second time he spoke sharply to her, it was about punctuality. She arrived 12 minutes late to meet him because a shipment from Vietnam had been delayed at the port. She had just finished negotiating emergency air freight. Roy checked his watch dramatically. Time management reflects respect. "I'm sorry," she replied quickly. "There was a logistics issue." "There will always be issues," he interrupted. "I expect better." She apologized again, even though she had just saved her company millions. The third time was worse. During a discussion about her marketing campaign featuring bold, confident women, he smirked. "Selling wigs is image-based. Don't confuse branding with legacy." Stung deeply. Velour Luxe wasn't vanity to her. It was empowerment. It helped women experiencing hair loss, chemotherapy recovery, confidence rebuilding. But instead of defending her vision fully, she softened. "I understand." And each time she softened, he strengthened. Roy had mastered something dangerous. He confused authority with affection. He would criticize her in private, then praise her publicly. He'd withdraw emotionally, then return warmly. That inconsistency created emotional dependency. When he was kind, she felt relief. When he was cold, she felt anxiety. Her mood began syncing with his approval. This is how intelligent women get trapped, not through ignorance, but through emotional investment. Celine believed love required humility. She did not yet realize humility without boundaries becomes self-erasure. Despite everything, she remained physically reserved. She had chosen to wait. Intimacy meant something sacred to her. Roy respected that at first, or at least appeared to. But beneath his patience was expectation. And expectations, when unmet, often reveal true character. One evening as they watched the skyline from his apartment, he asked quietly, "Do you trust me?" "Yes," she replied. "Then why do you hold back?" The question lingered in the air. It was not accusatory. It was suggestive. Celine felt the pressure without it being spoken directly. Love, she believed, required compromise. But compromise without clarity is surrender. And surrender without safety is regret waiting to happen. That night, as she drove back to her Lekki suite, the city lights blurred slightly through her windshield. She replayed his words. "You're young. You need refinement. Expect better." None of them were screams. None were insults. But together they formed a pattern. And patterns matter. She stood on her balcony later that night, looking at the water. The Atlantic stretched endlessly before her. She had conquered markets, negotiated with international suppliers, built employment for dozens of families. Yet when it came to love, she was unsure. She whispered to herself, "Maybe this is just growth." But somewhere deep inside, a quiet voice asked a different question. Or is this the beginning of losing yourself? And that question, though she ignored it then, would change everything. Success does not protect you from emotional confusion. If anything, it can make you more vulnerable to it. Celine Adeyemi had built Velour Luxe on discipline and clarity. She knew how to negotiate contracts, structure supply chains, and read financial projections. But relationships did not come with balance sheets or warning labels. They came with feelings. And feelings can distort logic. It happened on a quiet Sunday evening. Roy's apartment overlooked the city skyline, polished and expensive. The atmosphere was soft, dim lights, slow jazz playing in the background, glasses of sparkling water resting on the coffee table. They had just finished dinner. He had been unusually affectionate that night, attentive, warm, relaxed. Then he asked it. "Celine, do you love me?" She smiled softly. "You know I do." He studied her carefully. "Then why do I still feel distance?" Her smile faded slightly. "Distance. You're guarded, controlled, calculated." His voice was calm but deliberate. "Love isn't strategic." She blinked. "I'm not strategic. I'm careful." He leaned closer. "Careful feels like hesitation." Silence filled the room. There it was again, that subtle suggestion that she was lacking something. She had been raised with strong values. Physical intimacy was sacred to her. She had always envisioned sharing that part of herself in marriage. But Roy didn't attack her values directly. He questioned her love. "I need to know you're all in," he said quietly. The implication was clear. Proof. Love in that moment felt like something she had to demonstrate. And that is how compromise begins, not with pressure but with doubt. Celine didn't make a reckless decision. She didn't abandon herself overnight. She simply told herself she could bend, just a little. Because relationships require effort. Because her mother had said endurance builds strength. Because she didn't want to lose him. That night, she crossed emotional boundaries she once believed were immovable. Not because she was ready, but because she feared that holding her standards too tightly would cost her the relationship. And afterward, as she lay awake beside him, staring at the ceiling, she felt something unfamiliar. Not regret, not shame, but imbalance. She had given something sacred and received temporary reassurance. That is how manipulation works. It rewards compromise just enough to make it feel worthwhile. After that night, Roy's tone changed subtly. Not softer, stronger. He called more frequently, but expected immediate responses. He questioned her schedule more closely. "Why was your phone off for 2 hours? I was in a board meeting. You couldn't step out." She laughed lightly, thinking he was joking. He wasn't. "You're too absorbed in work," he said once. "A woman should know when to prioritize." The sentence lingered. A woman should know. She had built an empire at 25. Yet suddenly she felt like she was being graded. The fourth time he spoke rudely was during a disagreement about a product launch delay. She had decided to postpone the European release to maintain quality control. "It's a mistake," Roy said sharply over dinner. "You're too emotionally attached to perfection." "It's not emotion. It's brand integrity." He exhaled, clearly irritated. "You don't understand leverage." The dismissal hit harder this time. She had studied international trade policies, spent months negotiating suppliers. Yet he spoke as if she were inexperienced. "I do understand leverage," she replied, her voice steady but soft. He shook his head. "This is why I push you. Because you still think small." Mo. The word echoed long after dinner ended. The fifth was colder. She missed his call while finalizing a large distributor contract. When she returned it 30 minutes later, he didn't answer. He didn't answer the next day either. Or the day after. When he finally responded, his message was brief. "I needed you. You weren't available." No acknowledgement of her responsibilities. No recognition of her effort. Just withdrawal. She felt anxious in a way she didn't understand. Why did his silence disturb her more than his criticism? Because unpredictability creates dependency. When affection becomes inconsistent, you start working to earn it back. On her balcony that night, the Atlantic wind brushing gently against her face, Celine reflected on everything. She replayed his words. "You're young. You think small. You're too absorbed in work." She asked herself quietly, "Am I difficult?" It's a dangerous question when asked in the wrong relationship. Because instead of evaluating his behavior, she evaluated herself. This is how intelligent women shrink. They assume responsibility for someone else's emotional immaturity. A subtle isolation. Roy also began planting subtle comparisons. "My colleagues' wives are more supportive. You're strong, but sometimes men need softness. You don't always have to be the boss." Each statement alone was harmless. Together they shaped a narrative. You are too much. And when a woman begins believing she is too much, she starts becoming less vocal, less assertive, less confident. Celine noticed she was apologizing more, explaining more, overthinking her responses before speaking. This was not who she was in business. But in love she was trying to adapt, trying to fit, trying to endure. The tension reached a new level on a Wednesday evening. She had been at the office since 6 a.m. A shipment delay threatened her European expansion. She negotiated emergency freight costs, handled payroll adjustments, and addressed a branding crisis online. By 7:30 p.m., she was exhausted. Roy called. "Come over. I want you to cook tonight." She blinked slowly. "I'm really tired. Can we do tomorrow?" Silence. "You're tired. I've been at work all day. And," she hesitated, "I just need to rest." His tone hardened. "So you can run a company but you can't cook for your man?" The words hit sharply. "It's not that. I'm just exhausted. If you cared, you'd make the effort." Her throat tightened. Then came the sentence that changed everything. "Leave." She thought she misheard. "What?" "If you're not willing to show up properly, leave." No shouting. No explosion. Just cold dismissal. And for the first time, instead of bending, she stood. He picked up her bag, walked to the door. Her hands trembled, but she did not argue. She did not apologize. Left. As the elevator descended, tears filled her eyes. Not because she had left, but because she suddenly saw something clearly. Love should not feel like a performance review. Love should not feel like employment. Love should not feel like fear of failing. When the doors opened, she stepped into the night air of Victoria Island. Her heart heavy but strangely awake. She didn't know it yet. But that Wednesday was not a loss. It was the beginning of clarity. And clarity is more powerful than attachment. The drive from Victoria Island to Lekki felt longer than usual. Celine gripped the steering wheel tightly, her vision blurring, not from the traffic lights, but from the tears she refused to let fall fully. The city moved around her in its usual rhythm. Street vendors weaving between cars, headlights flashing, distant music vibrating faintly through the night air. But inside her car, everything felt silent. His words echoed. "If you're not willing to show up properly, leave." Show up properly. As if she were reporting to duty. As if love were a shift she had failed to complete. By the time she reached her waterfront suite in Lekki, her chest felt tight. She parked slowly, walked through the lobby without greeting the concierge, and stepped into the elevator. When the doors closed, she finally exhaled. And the tears came. Her apartment lights were dim when she entered. She dropped her bag gently onto the couch and walked straight toward the balcony. The Atlantic stretched endlessly before her, dark and steady, waves rolling in rhythm against the shore. The sound of water usually calmed her. Tonight, it only amplified her thoughts. She removed her heels, letting them fall carelessly beside the sliding door. The night air wrapped around her skin as she stepped outside. She poured champagne into a tall glass, not to celebrate but to numb. The first sip burned slightly. The second steadied her. The third did nothing. She replayed everything. The way he said it. The coldness in his eyes. The ease with which he dismissed her. And beneath the pain was a more uncomfortable realization. He wasn't angry. He was testing control. That truth hurt more than rejection. Her phone felt heavy in her hand. There was only one person she could call without filtering her emotions. Bella. Bella did not ask many questions over the phone. "I'm coming," she said simply. 35 minutes later, Bella stepped into the apartment wearing jeans and a loose sweater. Her expression alert and protective. She took one look at Celine's face and knew. "Oh no," Bella murmured, walking straight to her and wrapping her arms around her shoulders. Celine didn't speak at first. She just held her friend tightly. Because sometimes the body knows you need safety before the mind can process it. They sat on the balcony together. The champagne bottle rested between them. "Tell me everything," Bella said gently. And Celine did. From the cooking request, to her exhaustion, to the word leave. She repeated it slowly. "He told me to leave." Bella's jaw tightened. "And you did." Celine nodded. "I didn't argue. I didn't cry there. I just left." Bella leaned back slightly and studied her. "That took strength." Celine shook her head. No. It felt like failure. Failure. Bella's voice rose slightly. He dismissed you like you were late to a meeting. Celine stared at the water. Maybe I should have just cooked. Bella's eyes widened. Celine. Silence stretched between them. Then Bella spoke slowly. Do you hear yourself? Bella had always been direct, but never harsh. You built a company from scratch, she continued. You negotiate contracts across continents. You manage supply chains. But you think not cooking on one tired Wednesday means you failed as a partner. Celine swallowed. When you put it that way. Bella leaned forward. Let's examine this properly. That was Bella's style. Not just emotion analysis. How many times has he spoken down to you? Celine hesitated. Maybe 5. Bella waited. And how many times have you adjusted yourself afterward? Celine didn't answer immediately. Every time, she whispered. Bella nodded slowly. That's a pattern. The word settled heavily. Pattern. Not accident. Not misunderstanding. Pattern. The dangerous belief. Celine exhaled. My mom always said women need endurance. That marriage requires sacrifice. Bella's expression softened slightly. Sacrifice, yes. But not self-erasure. A pause. Endurance in a healthy relationship means patience during growth. Not tolerance of disrespect. Celine stared at her champagne glass. I thought maybe I was being too sensitive. Bella shook her head firmly. No. You're being conditioned. The word hit differently. Conditioned. Bella continued carefully. When someone criticizes you consistently, then gives you affection inconsistently, you start chasing approval. Celine's chest tightened. Because that was exactly what had been happening. When Roy praised her, she felt relief. When he withdrew, she felt anxious. She had been working not just in her business but emotionally. Working to earn stability. Bella looked at her directly. Do you feel safe being fully yourself with him? Celine opened her mouth to answer. Closed it. Then answered honestly. No. Not emotionally safe. Not free. She filtered her words around him. Adjusted her tone. Softened her opinions. Bella's voice dropped. That's not love. That's performance. The Atlantic waves crashed softly below. Celine leaned back in her chair. I gave him parts of myself I wasn't ready to give, she admitted quietly. Bella didn't judge. She simply nodded. Because you thought compromise would secure the relationship. Tears slid down Celine's cheeks again. I didn't want to lose him. Bella reached across and held her hand. And in trying not to lose him, you started losing yourself. That sentence pierced deeper than anything Roy had ever said. Bella's tone shifted slightly, more reflective. High-achieving women are often attracted to dominant men. Feels balanced. But there's a difference between leadership and control. Celine listened carefully. A leader respects your strength. A controller competes with it. Celine thought about how Roy reacted when she succeeded. He admired her publicly. But privately he minimized her. You're too absorbed in work. You think small. You need refinement. Each phrase was subtle, but repeated. Bella continued. Some men are comfortable dating powerful women. Until they realize that power cannot be contained. The wind lifted Celine's hair gently. For the first time that night, her tears slowed. Do you know what concerns me most? Bella asked softly. Celine shook her head. That you believe you must prove your love. Silence. Love is not proven through exhaustion. It is revealed through consistency. Celine had been trying to earn something that should have been given freely. Respect. Bella leaned closer. Every day you stoop for the wrong man, you reduce the space available for the right one. The sentence settled in her spirit like truth finding its home. She imagined her future self. 5 years from now. Would that woman be proud of how she endured? Or regret how she minimized herself? The answer came without effort. Celine stood slowly and walked to the railing. The water stretched infinitely. She inhaled deeply. "I don't want to become smaller," she said quietly. Bella smiled faintly. "Then don't." Simple, but powerful. "You deserve a man who celebrates your ambition," Bella continued. "Who doesn't feel threatened by your success. Who doesn't test your loyalty through discomfort." Celine closed her eyes. And for the first time, she allowed herself to imagine love differently. Not intense, not unpredictable, but stable, kind, secure. When Bella finally left that night, Celine remained on the balcony. But something had shifted. She wasn't crying anymore. She was thinking. Not about how to fix the relationship, but about why she tolerated what she did. She recognized something important. Her strength in business did not automatically translate to strength in boundaries. She had confused endurance with virtue. But endurance without respect is suffering. She placed her empty glass down, looked at the water, and whispered, "This cannot be my forever." The words felt different this time. Not defensive, decisive. "The love of my life would not treat me in this manner." And in that moment, clarity replaced attachment. Celine walked back inside. She didn't text him. She didn't rehearse arguments in her head. She didn't draft apologies she no longer believed in. Instead, she opened her laptop, not to work, but to journal. She wrote, "I will not confuse criticism with care. I will not prove love through exhaustion. I will not shrink to be chosen. I will not negotiate my dignity." As the night deepened, she felt something unfamiliar. Not heartbreak, liberation. Sometimes the moment that feels like rejection is protection. And as the Atlantic waves rolled steadily below her balcony, Celine realized something powerful. She was not losing a relationship. She was reclaiming herself. Celine woke before her alarm. The sunlight filtered softly through the sheer curtains of her lecky suite, casting golden reflections across the polished floor. For a brief moment she forgot. Then memory returned. The Wednesday night. The word leave. The balcony conversation. Bella's voice. "You're being conditioned." She lay still, staring at the ceiling. And then her phone vibrated. One message. From Roy. Her heart skipped, not out of excitement but habit. Emotional patterns don't disappear overnight. They loosen gradually. She unlocked her phone. "I'm proud of you. You showed strength by leaving without apologizing." She read it twice. Then a third time. Proud. Strength. Without apologizing. The wording unsettled her. Sounded like approval. Like evaluation. Like she had passed a test. Her stomach tightened. Why was he proud of something he caused? Why did it feel like he was still in control of the narrative? She placed the phone face down on the bedside table, sat up slowly, and instead of replying, she walked to the balcony. The Atlantic was calm that morning. Gentle waves, endless horizon. Celine wrapped a light robe around herself and leaned against the railing. She thought about everything. The subtle criticisms. The shifting tone. The pressure to prove love. The Wednesday dismissal. And now this message. If she had received that text a month ago, she would have felt relief. Validation. He's not angry. He sees me. We're okay. But today it felt different. Bella's voice echoed in her mind. Affection given unpredictably creates emotional dependency. Was this another moment of unpredictability? He pushed her away. Then praised her for leaving. He criticized her ambition. Then admired her strength. He questioned her love. Then said he was proud. It was a cycle. And cycles repeat until someone breaks them. Celine inhaled deeply. She whispered to herself, "This cannot be my forever." The sentence didn't feel dramatic. Felt logical. She returned inside, made tea instead of coffee, and opened her journal from the night before. She began writing again. What have I been tolerating? She listed them one by one. Being spoken to sharply in private. Being compared to more supportive women. Being guilt for prioritizing work. being tested emotionally, being dismissed when tired. Then she wrote something new. Why did I tolerate it? The answers were harder. I didn't want to lose him. I believed endurance equals love. I thought maturity meant adjusting. I confused control with leadership. A pause. That last line lingered. Confused control with leadership. Roy carried himself like a leader. Decisive, confident, authoritative. But leadership builds. Control diminishes. She realized something sobering. He didn't fall in love with her independence. He fell in love with the idea of guiding it. And when she resisted guidance, he tightened. Celine walked back to the balcony and stood quietly. She thought about her mother. Her mother had endured in marriage. But had she been happy? Or simply stable? There is a difference. Many women are taught to preserve relationships at any cost. But no one speaks enough about preserving self-worth. Celine realized she had been negotiating her dignity, quietly, without noticing. Every time she apologized for being busy. Every time she softened a strong opinion. Every time she absorbed a dismissive remark without correction. She was negotiating. And Roy was benefiting. The illusion of proud. She picked up her phone again. Read the message once more. I'm proud of you. It was subtle. But it positioned him as evaluator. As if her reaction existed for his approval. She imagined replying, I'm proud of myself too. But she didn't. Because she didn't owe him performance anymore. Instead, she placed the phone down again. And chose silence. Silence can be powerful when it is intentional. Celine dressed for work carefully that morning. Not to impress. But to remind herself who she was. She wore a structured ivory blazer, tailored trousers, and minimal jewelry. Her hair was styled in one of her signature Velour Luxe units. Sleek, flawless, intentional. When she walked into her office, her team greeted her with their usual energy. Good morning, Ma. She smiled genuinely. Because here she felt respected. Not tested. She led a strategy meeting that morning with precision. Discussed export timelines. Negotiated marketing placements. Approved supplier adjustments. No one questioned her competence. No one asked her to prove her dedication. No one dismissed her exhaustion. And it struck her sharply. If she demanded excellence in business partnerships, why was she accepting mediocrity in emotional partnership? Around noon, her phone vibrated again. Another message from Roy. We should talk tonight. She stared at the screen. 3 weeks ago, she would have rearranged her schedule immediately. Now she paused. And instead of reacting, she asked herself, what do I want? The answer was clear. Is not tension disguised as passion. She typed slowly. I'm focusing on work today. We can speak another time. The message was calm, neutral, firm. She sent it. And waited. His reply came quickly. Work again. No question mark. No curiosity. Just subtle judgment. And something inside her finally clicked. This was not partnership. It was competition for priority. And she would not compete for the right to run her own life. That evening, as she returned home, she replayed Bella's statement. Every day you stoop for the wrong man, you reduce the space available for the right one. She had been bending to keep someone who required shrinking. But what if the right love required expansion? What if the man meant for her admired her drive instead of resenting it? What if love felt stable instead of strategic? She realized something crucial. She had mistaken intensity for depth. But depth is calm, secure, consistent, not unpredictable, not testing, not conditional. She didn't need another dramatic confrontation. She didn't need closure delivered by him. She found closure within herself. Standing on her balcony again that night, she looked at the water and spoke softly. I will not earn love through sacrifice of self. The wind brushed against her skin gently. She continued. The man meant for me will not measure my devotion by how much I endure. Her voice was steady now. No one who truly loves me will ever make me feel small. And that was it. The moment was not loud. There were no fireworks, no shouting, no dramatic exits, just clarity. And clarity changes everything. Celine understood something deeply that night, something many women learn too late. When someone criticizes you repeatedly, rewards you unpredictably, tests your loyalty, withholds affection, then praises your compliance, they are not nurturing you. They are conditioning you. And conditioning is not love. It is control. Her phone buzzed one last time before midnight. Call me. No greeting. No warmth. No acknowledgement. Just command. Celine looked at the message calmly. Then turned her phone off. Not in anger. In finality. Because she realized something powerful. Closure does not require permission. Sometimes the bravest act of love is loving yourself enough to walk away. When Celine turned her phone back on the next morning, there were no dramatic messages waiting. No apology. No confession. No emotional paragraphs. Just silence. And strangely, that silence felt clean. Not heavy. Not anxious. Just finished. For the first time since she met Roy, she did not wake up wondering how he felt about her. She woke up wondering how she felt about herself. And that question changed everything. 3 days later, Roy requested to see her in person. Not through a command this time. Through a composed message. We should have a mature conversation. Celine read it carefully. 3 weeks ago, that phrasing would have intimidated her. She would have rehearsed responses, adjusted her tone, prepared to soften. Now she simply replied. Tomorrow, 4 p.m. My office. Neutral. Controlled. On her terms. The shift in energy. When Roy walked into her office the next afternoon, something felt different. He was the same man. Sharp suit. Polished shoes. Calm demeanor. But Celine was no longer the same woman. She didn't rise nervously. She didn't rush to greet him. She gestured toward the chair across from her desk. Please sit. He studied her for a moment, as if sensing the shift. You've been distant, he began. I've been clear, she corrected gently. He leaned back slightly. I think you overreacted on Wednesday. The old Celine might have explained herself. The new one simply asked. How so? You know I push you because I see potential. I expect certain things in a serious relationship. There it was again. Expectation framed as guidance. Control framed as care. She nodded slowly. I've reflected on that. And I've realized something. She folded her hands calmly on the desk. I don't want a relationship where love feels like evaluation. He frowned faintly. You're misunderstanding me. No, she replied softly. I understand clearly. Silence lingered between them. She continued. You've spoken to me in ways that diminish me. You've questioned my dedication to my work. You've tested my loyalty. You've withdrawn affection to make a point. His expression hardened slightly. That's dramatic. She smiled gently. No, it's accurate. Roy tried a different approach. I said I was proud of you. I know. You showed strength. She nodded. And I'm proud of myself too. That sentence landed differently. Because it did not seek his validation. Stood independently. You're making this bigger than it needs to be, he said quietly. Celine inhaled slowly. No. I've been making it smaller than it was. The room fell still. He wasn't used to resistance that wasn't emotional. He was used to soft apologies. To explanation. To bending. But she was not bending. She was standing. I care about you, she continued. But I will not stay in a dynamic where I have to shrink to be loved. You're exaggerating, he said. I'm evolving. He leaned forward. So that's it. You're walking away because I expect effort. She held his gaze. I'm walking away because effort should be mutual, not measured. His jaw tightened. You'll regret this. That sentence might have shaken her once. Now it didn't. I won't, she replied. Not arrogantly. Confidently. When he stood to leave, there was no dramatic scene. No shouting. No tears. He paused at the door. "You're letting pride ruin this." She answered calmly. "No. I'm letting self-respect guide me." And that was the last conversation they ever had. The weeks that followed felt lighter. Not because she didn't feel anything, but because she felt free. Free from monitoring her tone. Free from over-explaining her schedule. Free from earning approval. Veloura Luxe expanded into 2 new international markets that quarter. She negotiated with confidence. She hired a new executive team. She began mentoring young women entrepreneurs. And most importantly, she began studying emotional intelligence. Not to fix someone else, but to understand herself. She learned about emotional manipulation disguised as mentorship, intermittent reinforcement and how it creates dependency, the psychology of control in high-achieving relationships, the difference between endurance and self-abandonment. Knowledge strengthened her boundaries, and boundaries strengthened her peace. Months later, as she stood once again on her balcony overlooking the Atlantic, she reflected on everything. She no longer felt anger. She felt gratitude, because sometimes the wrong relationship teaches you the standard for the right one. She understood now. Love does not require proof through suffering. Love does not demand exhaustion. Love does not test your loyalty through discomfort. Love does not compete with your ambition. The right partner will not feel threatened by your growth. He will celebrate it. He will not ask you to choose between your calling and your affection. He will not measure your devotion by how much you endure. Strength is not in how much you tolerate. It is in how clearly you define your limits. Endurance builds healthy relationships only when there is mutual respect. But enduring repeated disrespect builds silent resentment. You do not earn love by shrinking. You attract healthy love by standing fully in who you are. If someone criticizes you consistently, withdraws affection strategically, tests your devotion, minimizes your achievements, or makes you feel small, that is not growth. That is erosion. And erosion happens quietly, until you choose differently. Celine did not lose a man. She gained clarity. She did not become harder. She became wiser. And wisdom is far more powerful than endurance. As the sun dipped below the horizon and the water shimmered in gold, she whispered softly to herself, "I will never shrink to be loved." And this time, she meant it. My darling viewers, tell us what you think of the story in the comments section. Do well to hit the subscribe button so you would be notified when we drop the next story. If you enjoyed this story, please hit the like button and share this video with your loved ones. Thank you so much for watching. Bye for now.